Well, I haven't done a fan video in quite some time, mainly because I haven't acquired any new fans. But this was recently given to me by my father, who got this from work. OSHA came in and demanded that this fan be removed at once, even though it had been in the company's facilities for about 20 years. So, anyway, this Jack Frost fan made by Knapp-Monarch, possibly in the early 1960s, late 1950s. It's your typical drugstore fan. This is a lot like the fans they sell today in drugstores and discount stores, which are very sparse in features and not the best of quality. This is actually very low quality for the time period. Hell, even for today. It has a very underpowered motor with one of the smallest diameter shafts I've ever seen on any fan. But the blade, of course, is pitched accordingly. So it spins very quick, very fast, and it does move a lot of air, incredibly. It's one speed. It has originally had no power switch at all. I actually added this to the power cord. The idea was if you wanted it on, you'd plug it in. If you want it off, you unplug it. I guess that was the whole concept. It surprisingly has two oil ports, which drip oil directly onto the felt pads. There's one pad per bearing. If the pads are misplaced or not properly aligned with this hole, then of course the oil will drip into nowhere. In fact, I'm going to show you what those look like. Alright, so I'm going to remove the back cover here. You can see what it looks like inside. And you also see I did some electrical repairs to this fan. These older fans use a cotton-clad wiring. Mainly, well, this is all original wiring, but from the enameled wire from the coil to the main power cord, they used a cloth wrap, which has over the years has degraded substantially. So I replaced one whole section of it with heat shrink tubing, and to prevent excess wire flexing from moving the power cord because of the fan's design, the power cord can be pushed into the motor and cause flexing of these wires. I actually attached them using zip ties to the motor's coils, and that just eliminates the possibility of flexing the wires and causing the insulation to further break down. Anyway, here's one of the felt pads. It goes right into the motor around the bearing, and it has a section of it that folds over the motor, as you can see, and it's supposed to land right below the oil port. So when you drop oil into the motor, it soaks up into this pad. And here's another example of how cheaply built this fan is. Here's one of the metal tabs that holds the back cover on. That holds the bottom half of the cover. And you just slide it on like that. And this screw holds the top of the cup, or the cover, in place. So it's really minimal construction on this machine. And you saw the size of the motor. It's not very impressive, but I guess given the size of the fan, you know, it does its job. So, of course, it's no oscillator on this fan. It's a stationary model. And here's another really good example of poor construction. The neck consists of a simple U-shaped piece of thin steel, which is clamped onto the base using a stamped steel wing nut and a machine screw. And there's nothing in between to prevent this from being crushed inward. So if you over-tighten it over time excessively, it could cause metal fatigue failure. That's another concern with this, the way this U-shaped bracket is mounted to the motor housing. It's really attached only with folded metal tabs. and there's another opportunity for metal fatigue. Now the base itself is, again, stamped steel, held together with nothing but folded metal tabs. So as you can clearly see, this thing is no quality fan. I haven't seen anything built this poorly in a long time. And the problem is, with plastic, you can build something like this relatively cheaply, and the plastic can be molded in a way that it's quite sturdy and can last for generations. But the only reason this fan is still alive today is because it was hardly ever used. As a matter of fact, this thing was pristine when I got it. I only had to do a minor cleaning, so obviously it wasn't used heavily in its lifetime. But despite all that, it still has good bearings. The bearings are amazing. I've never seen a fan with such tight bearings. I mean, in a good way. And with a good oiling, well, I'll let it speak for itself. So I did add this switch. It was the first thing I did to it because I do not want a fan that I have to unplug every time I turn it off. That just doesn't make any sense. Oh, and the person who apparently brought this into the company had screwed it to the desk, so he drilled a hole in the base and mounted a rubber base underneath, and it was actually attached to some furniture, so there's that. But the paint is actually really cool. There's only a few scratches, and you know, the blades are painted into this really cool copper finish, and the head badge is amazing. Nice and shiny, no damage at all to the silk screening. So, oh, and one more thing, I'll let you look at the specification stamp underneath. And the date code is on the very bottom. It's 163. So I imagine the fan was made in 1963. I can't really prove otherwise. So, oh, and here's another example of poor quality. These are the feet, and they're riveted to the base. Just little rubber rings. That's all. Alright, let's see how she runs. Runs very smoothly. When I first got this fan, it was actually a little out of balance, and I figured out that the blades were slightly tweaked, and the hub was off. It wasn't really off center, but it was bent to the side a little bit. And after I straightened everything out, it started running like this, smooth as it possibly could ever be. And the spin down in this thing, because of the bearings, probably has a little bit to do with the narrow shaft, because there's not much friction between the bearings and the shaft, being at a smaller diameter. It takes forever to spin down. I'm actually very impressed. Still going. But my plan is to bring this to work and use it on my desk. It makes a great desk fan. I might just leave it here because it's been helpful on those hot, days while I'm working on the computer, editing videos or whatever. And it's nice to have a small fan here that, keep me nice and cool. So, I hope you've enjoyed, and have fun.